Welcome back now to the war in the Middle East. Hundreds of protesters gathered outside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem on Wednesday, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. They also called for the release of the remaining hostages held in Gaza. Demonstrators held placards and banners, some chanting slogans while they clashed with police. The protest comes after Hamas released a proof of life video of Israeli-American captive Hersh Goldberg Holland.
I think that Bibi has full responsibility for what happened in the October 7th and today, and he should quit immediately. Yeah, everything that we need them to come home, and if we don't, we can't live here. We are not safe in here. We have to know that our government is taking care of us, and after we should deal with Hamas, with Hezbollah, with Iran, with everybody. But first, bring our people home.
Meanwhile, police have arrested over 100 students in California and Texas as protest over the war in Gaza intensifies. 4 police officers have also been injured during pro-Palestinian protests at Emerson College in Boston, and 108 arrests were made. 93 people at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles were taken into custody on trespassing charges. 1 person was also arrested for assaults with a deadly weapon. The movement began at the Columbia University in New York last week as students called on universities to cut financial ties to Israel and divert from the companies they say are enabling its brutal war in Gaza.
The goal, I think, was to start an encampment, but earlier this morning they were accosted by police officers. Apparently they were told to come and ruin their encampment that they were starting to build. Anyone who will stay on the grass will be arrested, and so there are people who decided to stay. They're all interlinked in the center.
As an African-American person, I understand what it is to have your rights taken away. Not at the scale of Palestinians, but I understand what it means to have your rights taken away or to be treated badly. This was a quiet protest. We did not hurt anyone, hit anybody, start any riots. So basically it was a protest that was very civil, and they came and started hitting people and started arresting people.
Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has denounced the pro-Palestinian protests across U.S. universities, describing it as horrific and anti-Semitic. Mr. Netanyahu compared the current atmosphere to the situation in German universities during the 1930s. He called for an end to the demonstration, adding that the response of some of the university's presidents was shameful.
Happening on America's college campuses is horrific. Anti-Semitic mobs have taken over leading universities. They call for the annihilation of Israel. They attack Jewish students. They attack Jewish faculty. This is reminiscent of what happened in German universities in the 1930s. It's unconscionable. It has to be stopped. It has to be condemned, and condemned unequivocally. But that's not what happened. The response of several university presidents was shameful. Now, fortunately, state, local, federal officials, many of them have responded differently, but there has to be more. More has to be done. It has to be done not only because they attack Israel, that's bad enough. Not only because they want to kill Jews wherever they are, that's bad enough. It's also, when you listen to them, it's also because they say not only death to Israel, death to the Jews, but death to America. And this tells us that there's an anti-Semitic surge here that has terrible consequences. We see this exponential rise of anti-Semitism throughout America and throughout Western societies as Israel tries to defend itself against genocidal terrorists. Genocidal terrorists who hide behind civilians. Yet it is Israel that is falsely accused of genocide. Israel that is falsely accused of starvation and all sundry war crimes. It's all one big libel. But that's not new. We've seen in history that anti-Semitic attacks were always preceded by vilification and slander. Lies that were cast against the Jewish people that are unbelievable, yet people believe them. And what is important now is for all of us who are interested and cherish our values and our civilization, to stand up together and to say enough is enough. We have to stop anti-Semitism because anti-Semitism is the canary in the coal mine. It always precedes larger conflagrations that engulf the entire world. So I ask all of you, Jews and non-Jews alike, who are concerned with our common future and our common values, to do one thing. Stand up, speak up, be counted. Stop anti-Semitism now.
Our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, joins us now. Maria, great to see you again today. There must be a lot of disruption to normal activities in cities where these schools are located. What are the local residents saying about the disruptions?
Well, the local residents are obviously a bit concerned about the violence as it's impeding upon their communities. And the greater concern is just the safety of those who are not involved in the protest. So that is the number one concern in ensuring that police are able to maintain security for those communities and ensuring that the residents are not at all in harm's way. That is going to be the primary piece. But the secondary piece is really about how the United States is responding overarchingly, because as you said, this has spread across universities, both from the West in the United States, USC, to the northern regions, obviously Columbia University, and then to Michigan, which is the Midwest area. So this is sweeping across the country. And the real concern is around what the president has said he has signed, which is billions of dollars of aid to both Ukraine and Israel. And the concerns around the safety and security of Palestinians, who many in America have said are not a part of Hamas, have not been focused or have tried any harm against Israel. And they're concerned that these individuals that are Palestinian have obviously been dealing with quite a bit of starvation, even prior to the war, and other challenges right there at Gaza. So if you listen to some of what has been discussed, it's a very contentious concern. We know that the U.S.'s support of Israel has been not only a concern recently, but this has been a long-standing concern in the United States. Even if you go back to the civil rights era, it's very interesting. Many people are paralleling this event to what we've seen in previous history during the civil rights era in the 1960s and 70s.
And school campuses involved in the protests, some of them have been shut down for the rest of the year. Students will serve the rest of the semester online. This is frustrating for students and I must say for some of their parents as well, especially those not involved in the protest. Could authorities have deployed other means to de-escalate the situation?
You know, I think that authorities have tried other forms of de-escalation. We are less than 2 weeks for many schools, maybe a week for some schools away from graduation. And so to ensure that insurgence does not continue to happen, knowing that there was going to be this upcoming in the bill that the president recently signed with the funding going to support Israel, I think they were just trying to ensure that they thought about safety first. But you're correct. This does put some sort of a challenge and disappointment for some students that were hoping to complete on campus, and then their parents obviously having to readjust to ensure that they're home to be able to have their online semester completed.
So what do the students really want? Or, that doesn't matter in the scheme of things?
You know, if you look at any of our major civil unrest, civil disruptive areas that have focused in on and have led to marked change, especially in the United States, it's all started on our college campuses. And so our college campuses are typically those areas where when there is unrest across the country that show that unrest. And I think to your point is, what are they looking for? What they're looking for is they're looking for some sort of a outspoken remark from the U.S. government as it relates to the Palestinians that have been under what they believe is under attack, the Palestinians that are innocent bystanders, those who have been in the Gaza area without much support for many years. So they're looking at some sort of support for those individuals in the Gaza that have not, from their vantage point, have not been supported by the U.S. and that they believe have been under attack by Israel.
And say the schools give in to the demands, how would this impact on America's education system?
This should not have a major impact. We're right here at the end of the school year. It's not going to have a major impact. I think where the impact is going to come is as we look to see how the U.S. universities are going to respond to this. How are they going to be able to bring rest and peace? We know that summer school starts just in a few weeks. And so many students will be coming back on their college campuses for summer courses, and how they plan to respond. I mean, we've heard what many have said, that they don't agree with some of the administrative responses to the protesters, saying that they are supporting the protest versus condemning them. So I think there's going to have to be some governmental intervention to be able to address the political issues that are going to arise and continue to rise over the coming days and weeks ahead.
Yes, and that draws me to my next questions. Do authorities expect more universities to catch on to the protests in the rest of the country? You've mentioned a few.
Yeah, so I don't think we're going to see many more universities in this, because we are, to your point, at the end of this semester for the spring term. And so there will be a quieting on college campuses. But I think that what we're going to see is potentially in communities continuous civil unrest. We're also kind of at a point now that the bill has been signed. There will probably be limited amount of protests. This was really a way to try to push the American government not to continue to support the war efforts in supporting Israel. So I think now that has happened, we will obviously see some. I mean, there have been protests ever since the war began, pro-Palestinian protests in the United States, but probably not to the level that we're seeing now. But I mean, time will only tell. I don't think anyone expected this level of unrest on college campuses. But again, this is being very much likened to the anti-Vietnam War protests that we saw in the 60s. And this is, what many are seeing as a resurgence of our college students coming against and not in support of governmental actions.
And finally, what are lawmakers doing about this? In the meantime, I've heard some people calling for the resignation of some presidents of those schools who are not able to bring some kind of calmness to their campuses.
Yes, and you will continue to see that. I think that's more so what we're going to see over the next few weeks, because we are in the summer season, is a call for administrative changes in some colleges. Now, the question is, if the government does not intercede, if that's going to be able to move forward. But I think that depends on how much pressure alumni of these institutions will put on the administration, and if it will become a distraction. Obviously, most college presidents don't want their presidency to be a distraction to the academic progress of their institution.
Right. Thanks, Maria.